After joining the Walt Weekly, I'm here with our co-host, Ernest J. Robinson. And folks, I know a lot of y'all guys are disappointed with the election, and we are looking at the situation. We're not experts by no means, but we bring a certain level of expertise with Sergeant Ernest J. Robinson, because, he's a Capitol Hill guy, right? So today we want to talk about a couple of things. One, VIvek, Ramaswamy, and Elon Musk. And basically, this is a transitional thing. We're going to talk about the transition, but we do want to narrow it down to Elon and Ramaswamy for now. So with that said, we're going to move on and we're going to start right away in talking about this. First thing off the top, these guys are going to be leading an efficiency department, all right, a new department. It's not a cabinet level department yet, but I guess, they want to cut costs. And, we hear rumors that, the social programs are up and they're going to be cutting those drastically. Then, Social Security is also out there too. So we got to be very careful with that. Keep an eye on that. But these social programs, they're going to be going after. All right. So these guys are cutthroat. They come from a corporate environment. Like, I did. I come from a corporate environment. And a lot of times, my team, I may come off, a little bit rude or whatever, because, I've been corporate for 35 years. So I know how they think, all right? And they're cold. VIvek and Elon are cold corporate people. So they have no problem cutting your government programs or anything like that. They don't have a problem. They won't feel it. They go out and eat lunch. They lay 1 million people off, 1 million people lose their jobs. Not a problem. They are getting aid from the government. So with that said, that's what we want to discuss today, Ernest and I.
Yeah.
All right. So Ernest, what are you hearing with these two guys?
The way that I kind of view so it's the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, as you may want to try to call it out.
I thought they were talking about Bitcoin when they said Doge. Isn't there a Dogecoin or something?
No, but DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And as you already stated, it is not a cabinet level position. It's something that they just really created. But it also almost seems a little disingenuous and not necessarily done in good faith, because we have to spend money on their salaries and this entire department in order to being able to cut funding. So part of cutting funding is to spend more money, which does not necessarily, equate to being efficient. And so they're looking to try to cut a lot of things. I mean, even to the VA, which I know that we want to stay close to the topic and everything else, but there's a lot of things that they are going after. You already mentioned Social Security. They're talking about going after some of the benefits that as far as myself as a veteran, my father, my cousins, my uncles, that we all benefit from. They're talking about going after some of those things. And so I see this as something that potentially could be dangerous on paper. However, as of right now, as extreme as things are, I do not see it being overly successful in Congress actually getting it passed.
Why is that? Because they got control. The Republicans have control.
Yes, Republicans do have control.
Will have control.
But here's the thing. So as of right now, I think it's a 220 to 215 respectively in the House of Representatives. Republicans have 220. Democrats have 215. 218 gives the majority. So that's a razor thin margin. And as we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, the Republicans have not necessarily been lock and step when it comes down to major decisions. So as of right now, Speaker Johnson has a thin margin of error for any type of defections. So confirmations, cabinet member confirmations, or any confirmations for that matter, any particular laws that want to be passed or changed or amended or whatever it can be, many of them, especially for things like appropriations, come out of the House of Representatives first.
Okay.
And so if, in fact, that we have a lot of moderate Republicans, technically we only need 3 moderate Republicans to defect, and that would not necessarily carry over for the Republicans. So
But
you were
yeah,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Ernest. Yeah, that causes me to think about the Democrats, whether they can stay in line. You know what I mean? Because I really don't trust them with, they seem to be rudderless out there in the water. You know what I mean? Right now. So I don't know
Well,
what's going on with them.
so to a point, yes. But the most solid examples that we can have where the Democrats have been able to be locked in step is during the election for the speaker. And every single vote. This is back when Mike McCarthy was running, and the 17 or 15 different votes that they did, where Democrats were 100% behind Hakeem Jeffries.
Okay.
And they stayed locked in step the entire way, right? Throughout that marathon of a voting election. Whereas Republicans ebbed and flowed every single vote that went up there.
But
To
don't you
even
think right
voting
now?
him out, then to vote in Jim Jordan, then to vote him out, and then now to have Mike Johnson. So I would see, again, deductive reasoning that the Democrats, on many of the things that most Americans do care about, and especially when it comes down to some of these particular programs, I believe that they would be more solid together and not defecting from the things that are going to have an adverse effect on our community.
Well, people may tune in and say this. We got some very important information that we're going to share regarding these cabinet level positions, and we're going to talk about the transition because everything is going to be based on the transition.
Yes.
Ernest, I know you can speak to that because the transition, you got maybe 4,000?
Yes.
Then you got the cabinet level. Then go ahead, please.
Yeah. So there's roughly about 4,000 positions within the administration. That's to include all of the cabinet positions, the undersecretaries, the deputy secretaries, the S's, which are by all intents and purposes, those are government level federal and employees. But that's also one of the things that Trump had threatened to do away with, which is those civil servants that serve in those particular positions.
You're going to put a lot of people out of work.
Yes. And many have already began their resignations because they were appointed by the previous administration. And many of those resignations will probably come, especially prior to the inauguration. So there will be some potential delays in some of the programs that we already have going on right now. There needs to be a resolution on the budget, what we call a CR, where they allow for the budget to kind of pass on through the next Congress. So that way, so we can continue to pay, as people kind of heard President Obama kind of always talk, so we can continue to pay our bills and that we can have that resolution that allows for us to be able to continue to do that.
Well,
I do foresee there may be some brief interruptions of some of the services that we may have, that we currently have right now over the next couple of months.
Okay. Now, I have a list of some of the cabinet positions that's got to be filled. I do want to just go over that quickly for the audience information. We got to fill Secretary of State. They're responsible for foreign policy and representing the United States on the international stage. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we got a Secretary of the Treasury. We all know that. They print the money and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Secretary of Defense, the defense itself. All right, you have the Attorney General. Okay, and that is with the Justice Department. Who knows what's going to happen with that one? That is going to be Trump's weapon, according to him. He's going to be able to go after people through the Department of Justice. Matt Gaetz took his name out of the running. So, they're going to pick Matt Gaetz in the first place. That it's going to be extreme people in these positions. All right, Secretary of the Interior, we're going to need. Secretary of the Agriculture, they're going to need. Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Health and Human Services. And that's a name of few. There are much more than that. I just don't want to, it's a few. Mm-hmm. And those positions have to be up and running, or it has to be a handoff as they go through confirmation. All of these positions require confirmation. from the Senate and the Congress, right?
Yeah.
So, and I understand that the first thing is going to be low-hanging fruit. And what is low-hanging fruit to them? I'm just trying to put myself into their shoes. And low-hanging fruit for them would be any type of social programs.
Yeah.
Right? You heard that they want to cut some of these lunch programs, food programs, and this and that. That is going to be cut. There's nothing we can do about that. But before I turn it back over to you, Ernest, let me put in a few words. I'm going to go off topic a little bit.
Yeah.
If they want to take away our programs, then we need our reparations, which is way past due. All right? And I'm looking at the national debt. The national debt is $36 trillion as of November. And that is what they owe us, $36 trillion. And if they want to cut all the programs and get rid of people, and I mean, AI is going to do a lot of that anyway, but they want to take people's benefits and all this kind of stuff. Even the Department of Veterans Affairs is going to be impacted from what I can see.
Yeah.
And I know you know much more. You're more enlightened than that than me. You're more knowledgeable. But pay us out $36 trillion. That's what I'm saying. Okay? That is my position. Pay us our reparations, then you keep your money. Because without you treating us in the last 400 years the way you've been treating us, that's why we're in this position. So you have to take responsibility and pay us our deferred wages plus interest plus any punitive damages. And pay us the $36 trillion. And then we'll get out of your face. Okay, that's the way I look at it. But I digress, folks. The guys know me. So let's go back to Ernest. Let's get back on pace here. But I did want to put that in.
Yeah, so you bring up a pretty good point, right? But I don't think how reparations is going to fit into this, because you have to identify that there was a wrong and that there's something that needs to be repaired, right? And so whether that becomes restitution, right, and or reparations to an offense that was actually caused, and there was a person who did cause it, and then there was a victim of whatever particular action, in which I think it is well documented about the atrocities that have occurred to the Black community, as well as I think it can definitely be articulated and argued as into the continued hurt that has been caused, and that, there can be a calculated amount to being able to address that. However, with this particular administration, I do not see that being a topic that's going to be welcomed, and especially when there are so many other things they already are trying to take away and to diminish, which will make things much harder on the communities that have already been harmed by the government.
And they're going to make it worse for those communities because they continue to accept government assistance. So anybody accepting government assistance is going to be in trouble.
Well, so that becomes where I think the rub is going to occur.
Right.
Because there are more ethnicities outside of African Americans who receive subsidies, government subsidies, right? And so in order to cut those particular programs, you're going to impact a lot more people than just the African American community. And so therefore, that's why I see the rub and the jostling for support for these type of initiatives. You brought up those Health and Human Services. Well, that's supposed to be ran by Kennedy, which we already know that he is no vaccines and conspiracy theorists and everything else. You have Secretary of Defense, which was going to be the Fox reporter.
What's his name? Haggerty? What's his name?
Hegseth, I believe.
Something like alcoholic, child, wife beater, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, womanizer. Yeah. Where and which was very interesting to have someone's mother come on to national TV to advocate that you are somehow good and reformed and should be accepted in this particular position, which has happened. It never.
She want to retract, right? It's not too late.
So, but Ron DeSantis has also been considered for that particular position as well. AG was Matt Gaetz. I cannot remember who else was going to replace him.
What, the Attorney General? I think wasn't that the the guy, the Florida governor that you just mentioned?
DeSantis?
Yeah, DeSantis is being mentioned for that, isn't he?
No, he was for the Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
He was there for Secretary of Defense because he used to be a JAG officer.
Oh, okay.
In the military.
Well, at least he had something.
Yes, I mean
he does. He's a governor.
Have a background as well as obviously being obviously a successful governor.
Right.
In his own right. But the purpose of me mentioning all of those different things is that it seems a little bit disingenuous because each and every person that, with the exception of Elon Musk, VIvek Ramaswamy, J.D. Vance, the vice presidential pick, VIvek Ramaswamy, Kennedy, J.D. Vance, all have spoken negatively against and about Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah, all of them.
I think what's going to be interesting is, despite some of the extreme proposed legislation, it's going to be interesting as into, one, how Congress itself is going to get behind that, but then how just the infighting, what that may look like, because I already know that you don't really like me. You don't really respect me. You don't,
right.
And that's vice versa from Trump to whomever the subordinates are, and from them to him, to Trump. That it's going to be interesting to how that's even going to really work. Yeah. So
yeah, I understand. I mean, look, we're looking at an extremist group taking over the government. That's what you got.
Yeah.
And for us as Black Americans, we have to protect ourselves. We have to look for ways to, one, now I'm going to tell you this, and I've always believed this, we shouldn't take anything from them, period. We don't want anything free. Give us our reparations and land, and we can go with that. But we shouldn't be looking at the government for no damn handouts, because that's going to end. They want to end that because they think we don't deserve it. But they forget the history. They want to put that all behind them and say, as if, we starting from the same blocks as they are. We're not.
Yeah, but we can't survive without a government either. Because even if we were to get, if they were today to sit there and say, hey, okay, we're going to give you $36 trillion that's going to be split evenly against every single African-American that's in this country, whether you had family in this country or not, we're just going to blanket.
You can trace your ancestry. It has to be, you have to originate.
No, I got you, but I was just saying for the sake of argument, the sake of argument, to every single adult that had family verification to be here, and if we're 13% of the population, so what, that's 330,500. So let's just say
we're 15%. We're 15%. We're not 13, man. Where you getting them?
Percent.
I think it's more like 20.
15%, right? And okay, even if we were 20%, okay, so we're looking at what, 10 million?
What? 10 million what?
10 million people, 20 million?
No, I mean, we're like 47 million according to the
47 million. Okay, fair enough. So
let's
just say
you add another 20 million to that because they undercount us.
I was trying to also account for the fact that how many people have children too, because they wouldn't necessarily quote unquote count under that. But for the sake of argument, let's just say 50 million people. Okay, that we're dividing this $36 trillion. We still need banks. We can
open our own banks.
We still need homes. We still need to be the part of we still need to be the part of the trade, because we still need goods to be able to come in here. We still need, if we even have our own grocery store. So we still need regulations. We still need a functional government, right? And I think that I'm not sure how functional this government is going to be with the way that this particular administration is being kind of pulled together.
Well, see, that's the interesting part, people, is I'm curious, all right, as to how they are going to govern based on their extreme positions. Conservative, like let's say the George Bush Republican, they track back to the middle eventually. They become moderate. Mm-hmm. These are extremists. They're already way out there. And then they go further out there. So that's what we need to look at. And the Black people need to realize, and I'm going to say it again, Black people need to realize they want to cut off your benefits. They think you're undeserving of benefits. So
Yes.
when we go out there, we have these kids, we do all this kind of stuff. When we don't get married, we got 5 baby mothers, whatever. They got to be taken care of.
Yeah.
The government's still loving. They're going to wipe it out. Look, I don't want to see people on the street hungry and this and that, but I'm telling you, our mindset has to change. And when I say mindset change, I'm saying they're not going to give you anything. Everything you get, you're going to earn. You're going to work for it. Okay?
Yeah.
Unless you're on disability. Okay?
Yeah. Well,
You got to work from now on. That's got to be your mindset. Everything I get, I've worked for it.
Yeah. But
that's the mindset that we have to have.
Well, yes, but I think part of the mindset also. So there's a couple of things that even with mindset, right? It's that when it doesn't happen overnight, despite how important the information might be or how dire the situation is, right? Even if you tell a smoker to stop smoking because you're going to get lung cancer or you may have a spot, they may still go out and smoke that day because now they're stressed out, and that's the way that they kind of resort to. You kind of always resort back to your training, even though it is important and dire that we do change our behaviors, our habits, and everything else. It takes time to being able to do that, and I understand what you're saying, because the sense of urgency is that we don't have time for you to kind of play it out and just kind of see where things are going and everything else. At the same time, we also, even though we're working for things to take care of ourselves, we have to be able, not just ourselves in our household, but we have to be able to do it in a communal aspect of it. That means we have to be able to trust and kind of work and barter with one another.
Like we used to do.
One of the things that allowed for our communities of Rosewood and Tulsa and even in Richmond and D.C. and Wilmington and Raleigh to thrive is because we did it as a communal effort.
Exactly.
To being able to better ourselves. But if we only work to take care of ourselves, meaning I'm only taking care of my household or those who carry my last name or those who, that I know, whatever, and we're not doing it as a community. And partly, and it's hard to being able to get into that type of mindset. Because
how long have we been talking about this, Ernest? The Walt Weekly came online in 2019. We've been talking, the first couple of episodes had to do with that.
Yep.
And that's what, that's 5 years ago. We're still talking the same thing.
Yep, but you want us to know what happened, what hasn't happened yet, and then maybe, and this partly on me, wherever it is me, and I'll take part, in the responsibility of that is we haven't written marching orders.
Well, that's
we haven't said what the plan actually is. We had a intellectual conversation about it, some real good takeaways for it. But we haven't created a plan. I think one of the things that made the Black Panthers so dangerous is that they not only spoke about it, they had an entire plan that they wrote up, that they handed out and said that these are the things that we need to have in our communities, and these are the things that how we get our own free clinics and have free lunch, and which the government dismantled the Panthers and then adopted all of their programs.
They destroyed the Black Panthers.
Yes.
That's what they did. The FBI destroyed the Black Panthers.
Yes.
So we all know that.
And then adopted the programs that they came up with, which made us more reliant on the government than being reliant on our own community. But I think in addition to thinking about the Black community is that we have to think about everybody. Because if we had our own grocery stores, we still want white people and our Asians and other ethnicities to shop in it, because we want to live in a harmonious community.
Not right now. I disagree with that. No, not right now. We have to look, I said, we have to, Ernest, let me just say this. We have to look inwards now. It becomes a matter of self-preservation. It becomes a matter of adapt or die. That's the position that we're going to be in when this Trump administration comes in.
Yes,
adapt or die. You know what survival means. You're better than me. I'm quite sure. You're a combat veteran. You're a man that face action.
Yes.
It comes to either we adapt or we die. Some got to give. Otherwise, we won't exist.
I got you. But when we're up against a common threat, okay, I'm not going to use the term enemy,
Right,
But when
right.
we have a common thread, it does not matter if I'm in the Army, the Marines. It doesn't matter if I'm black, if I'm white, if I'm wearing that particular uniform. Then what I mean is that as the human being, that is the military that we are in. Now we can be codified as, because in the Marine Corps we used to have a thing that we don't necessarily use today, but we had dark Marines, or we had dark green Marines, and we had light green Marines. That at the end of the day, we're all Marine, and we're all fighting the same fight. And whether or not if you were stationed here, stationed there, whatever the case may be, you're a support element, if you were a forward element, if you were an aggressor, if you were wherever the case was, front, if you were in the rear, we all had to fight together.
Right,
and we brought different aspects. And so I think that in this type of environment that we're in, it can't be that I'm only going to protect those that look like me, even though I know that we all want the same thing.
Well, tribal. And I think I mentioned this last year, that we have to think in terms of tribe. We are a tribe.
Yes.
Right? We're unique in this world. Okay?
Hold on, wait, because we can't use the term so loosely if we do not actually abide by what what it means to be within the tribe. Because we don't share the same morals, we don't share the same values, we don't share the same ethic.
But that's the key.
Tribal, so tribal in a sense, again, we're using it so loosely because, again, we look alike, but we don't share the same values. And so therefore, I'm going to do for you because you look like me, but you don't care anything about me. And so
that's
say
what
the
we
black,
gotta change.
as a matter of fact, because we had somebody from the black community that came down to the barbershops talking about Donald Trump and Byron Donaldson. We had somebody from the black community and Tim Scott as a sitting senator to come down to talk to the black. And I'm just saying, right? So we can't sit there and just.
What did you say about that, Ernest? What do you say about that? That came from slavery. That type of person, like Tim Scott and the rest of them, they came from that stereotype from slavery where they go tell the massa. They want to get the advantage. That's what they did. It was Uncle Tom. We always had those.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah. No, I get it. But that's so my point is, right? Mm-hmm. Because we also have people who did not look like us, who were our best advocates, who were the ones who were our allies. And so we don't want to necessarily ingratiate ourselves to those who look like us, but who will do us the most harm, and then alienate those who don't look like us, who are going to be our best champions and best allies. Our greatest support.
Thing is, I'm not saying it's something that you can easily navigate. No, you can't.
Right.
All right. It's going to take time. I really sat down and I thought, for us to get to that point, it would take maybe 75 years. We've got to start somewhere. They're going to take 75 years. I think like the Chinese. The Chinese think in long term. We think short term. They think long term down the road. But they have milestones as they go down that road, right?
Yeah.
So 75 years, I think we should be all right if we can survive these threats, like this immediate threat that's coming in with Donald Trump. But I am not afraid. But I do want to tell those people that are alarmed, that have not been able to reconcile this guy is winning and they're afraid. They started hoarding things now. They're buying water. They're buying food stuff. They're stocking up. I'm going to tell those people, do that. Yes, do that. Get prepared. You never know what's going to happen. You should always have a go bag. You know that. You have an emergency kit with your medications and this and that, all that. You have it and you have it ready to go. But don't panic. I think people have to look at it in terms of, it's a marathon now, We got to start somewhere, we get in the blocks and we start and we move forward. And the things you're saying that we cannot unify, that's a message that we should be pushing out there. Unification. Drill it. Stop having kids outside wedlock, okay? Have as many as you can if you're married, though, because we need the numbers. That's what they want. That's why they want to ban abortion, because they're losing their numbers. Because they had it and they thought that, this is a way to keep black people population control. So we got abortion here, this and that. I may be speaking out of conspiracy, but it was not what they intended when they brought the law. Okay.
No, I mean, so the intention was brought because they actually wanted to bring down the population because we didn't have sharecropping anymore.
Right.
And so they wanted to kind of do away with those, with having more Black people, and it was a population control measure, which is reason why most abortion clinics, you will find them in inner cities and so forth and so on, or highly populated areas where there are a lot of people of color. But
it backfired on them because most of the white women were getting these abortions.
Yeah, they were. But I think what I wanted to kind of say was something that you were sitting there saying before, that we got to start somewhere. We got to do this. I think the issue is not starting; it's continuing. Because we always start something, but we don't finish it, or not even the situation of finishing it. We don't continue. We don't set those milestones. Right. When you had sit there and said that something was going to take place in the next 75 years, it was a saying that was talking about the fact that, or it was a gentleman that was on TikTok or something like that. He was talking about the fact that we're all here within the same 100 years, and that's pretty much all that we have. For most people are promised. There are some that live beyond 100 years, but many of them aren't doing that much, beyond 100. But this is our time to being able to make those particular changes. So whether or not you're on the back end of your 100 years or you're in the middle of your 100 years, this is all that we have. And I think that we have to figure out a way to being able to continue the things that we are starting. We're so good at starting movements and this and that we don't have the staying power. And part of that had ended after many of our leaders were assassinated back in the late 60s. Now, granted, we've already talked about that many different times on this show, but continuing the things that we start, I think, is going to be more important, or just as important as getting started with something.
I agree with you totally. I do want to add, because I think we're going over a little bit, Ernest, and this is a subject that we got to spend a lot of time on. I do want to end with, don't be afraid to die when it comes to your rights. Freedom is not free. It's not free. You have to be able to fight for your freedom and be willing to die for your freedom. That's the mindset that we need to be ingrained with.
Thank you for joining the Walt Weekly. We can be found at Facebook, the Walt Weekly Podcast, Twitter at Walt Weekly, Instagram, the Walt Weekly, and www.thewaltweekly.com. Please like, follow, and share.